ciao. I
Ciao.
leave you the place with your guest. Goodbye. Thank you.
Goodbye, Anna. Thank you very much for introducing me. And thanks to all the audience that is connected since 8 hours. Thanks to my colleague that preceded me in this live event. Now I want to introduce you my speaker, my guest, which is Fabian Hirose. Hi.
Hi, Silvia. How are you? Thank you very
Very
much.
How are you?
I'm great. I'm enjoying. I'm speaking from Milano today. I'm living these days here.
Super. Thank you very much for joining us in this live conversation. And let me a little bit introduce you. Me and Fabian, we met a few weeks ago in occasion of this live streaming conversation. And I have to say that I'm very, very happy to get in touch with you and to know you now. Fabian was connected with our POLI.design consortium. And I have to thank Paola Galdi and Nestor Ponguta Puerto from the Colombian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And most of all, Gloria Ramirez, which is the Colombian ambassador in Italy, that helped us to get in touch and make this triangulation be possible to have you here. So thanks to them. And Fabian is a Colombian-born but British adopted. And due to his job career in the fashion world industry, with his company, he's a consultant for strategy and development and design thinking among the international fashion business. Am I right?
Yeah.
He works side by side in and with the fashion industry, we can say. And so thank you again for being here. And I'm sure we will have a very nice conversation together today.
Thank you.
Let me start just asking you a first question. Once we met, let's say, we contacted you asking you a keyword to suggest us for our 24-hour design conversation. And the keyword you suggested was evolución natural or natural evolution. And I would like to ask you to introduce this to our audience, so which is the meaning that you gave to this word in your interpretation, also related to the COVID-19 lockdown period. So, and also, why did you choose this specific keyword for us?
Thank you, Silvia. So the reason why I chose this combination of two words, which is natural evolution or evolución natural, is because as management consultant working in strategy and working in businesses, I have to deal with many crises. Many crises, a personal crisis, financial crisis, economic crisis, political crisis. So this is my daily bread. And something that I have learned in the past of the years of my professional practice is that all these crises, they have a beginning and they have an end. And sometimes we humans, we try to push them too much, and sometimes we alter the natural rhythm of the crisis itself. So instead of solving it, we just create bigger and bigger problems. So when I was told by the government, I was in Paris when I was told by the French government that we were entering to this COVID-19 emergency. I moved to Roma, and after that I moved to London. And I started to see how things were unfolding. I have family and colleagues working in Japan and in China, and I learned about this pandemic from the very early stage. So when I was invited by you, by Politecnico di Milano, I said, let's bring the natural rhythm of life and the natural evolution, because this pandemic, in the way that I see it, it is a great opportunity for all of us to evaluate how the natural rhythm and natural evolution works, and how we need to be in tune with that instead of being against or working against that beautiful rhythm. And I don't know, Silvia, if I have to say more.
What I would understand a bit more is in your personal experience as you are a design consultant and in your life and your work. How did you try to naturally evolve during this COVID-19 pandemic? Do you undertake any kind of a strategy or any kind of solution that you found out interesting?
Every time that when I'm working within a crisis moment, I respect the crisis because I believe crises, they teach us something. And sometimes the message is for all of us. Sometimes the message is for a particular part of the humanity and the nature. So my strategy, with all my respect, is to be open and to observe and to receive the learning process that this pandemic is giving us. Of course, as a human, as a part of this beautiful living system, I receive a message of this beautiful pandemic. But at the same time, as a consultant, as a person that helps businesses to grow, I'm receiving another messages. But there are messages that they are not for me. There are messages that they are for local governments, for local communities, for how people deal with the way that they relate with society. And I understood that I don't need to understand everything that is being said or every message that is out there. This is the way. And I learned that in nature because I'm from Colombia, and as you know, Colombia is impossible to live without the connection of nature. So nature taught me how to listen every piece, and at the same time listen, not to listen everything that is happening around. So that was a very good teaching from Colombia and the nation in Colombia.
Yeah, you also touched the same point that Isabel Henao touched before you. I mean, this natural connection with nature, listening to the signals. I think it's something important to adapt ourselves to this emergency that took us probably unprepared, I have to say, because no one was expecting that this was happening here in that way. No one was expecting to be locked in the house. I think you have also experienced that as you were in the Europe side of the world, so you also know how terrible, I have to say, was to be stuck in the house. And I would like to go through also your career, your job experience. So I would like to go through what happened in the fashion industry. And so as the COVID-19 pandemic and the consequent lockdown was undertaken in many countries during the past months, surely we have, as you said, we have to rethink ourselves, rethink about how we live our lives, our habits, but also how we work and how we interact with colleagues and also with the clients. So concerning your job that is characterized, I have to say, with many, many contacts with different clients, do you feel that something has changed in this period? I mean, in your explanation of the keyword that you sent us, you were mentioning that the human side of change is composed of thousands of separate little actions undertaken by people. So do you think that this is already happening in the fashion world right now? Or do you think that it will already have to start and we have to debate a little bit before and then they will take some actions?
I always talk about crisis in a most respectful way because they always show us something. So I have to say that this pandemic allow us to observe in a better way what we were doing. So this pandemic didn't generate the consequences that we are living right now. We were creating the actions. Therefore, the pandemic just show us very clearly how we were living and how we were doing things, especially at work. In the fashion industry is the result of the needs and desires of society. The fashion industry is not an entity or an independent industry that doesn't relate with society itself. So of course, during this time, we are affected because we need to reflect what society needs,
Of
and
course.
what society requires. And of course, what we were thinking 3 months ago was totally different from what we were thinking right now. So we can talk about fast fashion, we can talk about luxury, we can talk about all these extremes, but we cannot talk about this without talking so, the needs and the behavior of consumers and society, because we are the consequences of that. And that's the reason why I love my work, because it's all about people, it's all about sociology, anthropology, history, biology, because it's nothing to do with fashion. Fashion is just the result of that. So in this industry, we have the ability to adapt very quickly. That's why many people, I don't know if you have heard, many people said this industry is very difficult. This industry, you have to work a lot, because life doesn't stop. And what we are doing today probably is not what the client wants tomorrow. So sometimes we have to adapt very quickly. So we have an ability to adapt, I believe, um, that we've been using for many, many, many years. But fashion industry itself, they need to reconsider the message that is providing to the community that they are serving. And sometimes many of the companies, they are afraid of having a voice, because if they are having a voice, so the community, because we humans, we don't want to listen. We do
Sure.
this,
Sometimes it happens.
we prefer not to listen to the reality. But this is very human and is very normal, because living, existing, the experience of existence is complex. Waking up every day, having something to do, is very complex. I believe if you see animals and if you see plants, they learn how to survive all of these. But for all of us, this is painful. We get into depression, we get into happiness, we get into many other things, because the experience itself, and because we are aware of the experience, is very
Yeah.
complex. So I believe we, during this pandemic, what we need to do is we have an audience of our consumer communities that they are a bit more open to listen the message. Plus, we, working within the fashion industry, we have the maturity and the capacity to provide these kind of messages that sometimes we humans and individuals, we cannot understand clearly. So sometimes we as companies, we can embed, we can include those messages inside our marketing campaigns, our positioning campaigns, in our DNA.
I totally agree with what you said. I mean, it's like when you talk about influencers, as you are something that people is looking at, the same as fashion brands. People is looking at what the message they convey, the way they want to communicate. And so I really think that the fashion industry has the duty to say something on this topic that is really, really, really an emergency and is really needed by the people. So I want to talk a little bit about you, because I think you have really an interesting history. So
See,
while I was getting to know you, I felt that you are strictly in contact with Colombia. You already cited the fact that you come from Colombia before in this conversation. So at the same time, you are totally projected in the whole world due to your job, because you have a lot of contacts, as we said before, international brands everywhere. So do you notice any difference between all those international contexts you are in contact with in terms of reaction to this pandemic, to this emergency, or adaptation, as you said, to it? Do you feel any difference between the different contexts all over the world?
yeah. So firstly, I have to tell you, being born in Colombia, being Colombian, it has given me the opportunity to be international, because I have Jewish Spanish roots, I have Catholic French roots, and I have Colombian indigenous roots. I married a Japanese Buddhist man, and I study in England and Germany.
of the world. I mean, it's fully
Exactly. And
filled.
I'm living in
Unbelievable.
Milano. I'm living in Milano. But because we in Latin America, we are the result of immigration, sometimes uh, for amazing purposes and sometimes for not very amazing purposes. We, Latin America, we are the result of immigration. So I, as a Colombian, I am connected with the whole planet in a different way. It's just when I was living in Colombia, I didn't know it. But when I started to travel and studying, I said, "Come on, my grandparents came here, and this is so familiar of what I like." So I started to connect. So in Colombia, it's been very, very difficult, the situation with the lockdown. The government has been doing an amazing, amazing job. It is the situation, the actual situation of Colombia, the economy situation, and the because we have a lot of indigenous communities, so we need to protect. Because imagine if in any community this kind of a virus gets into them, we we are destroying our heritage. We have more or less like 85 communities in Colombia, indigenous communities, which is they are very, very important for us. And at the same time, we have received from Venezuela, because as you have heard, Venezuela is having problems with the political problems and financial problems. So we are their neighbors, and we've been receiving a lot of Venezuelans in our countries. And unfortunately, our country, Colombia, cannot, 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 cannot support them. So they are in a very minimum condition. So the government decided to protect all of us, and they are still under the lockdown. Is some of them, they are Colombians are struggling a lot, and many businesses are closing down. Um, it's different in every country because it depends on the political power or the political way of dealing with the pandemic, and at the same time the economy itself, because uh, even though it's a health emergency, it's affecting the financials and the economy. And at the same time is how we trust our politics and how we trust our economy, because this is the way that we react. In Asia, because Japan and China, Japan is very close. My family lives there. I've been married for 15 years.
Such
So
a long time. So you know
long
it very
time.
well.
Yes. So Japanese people, and they've been reacting extremely well to the emergency. In China, China is a whole continent, and it's probably like uh, 50 times like Europe. So imagine, so if in Europe we had this problem, imagine in China. So I believe every country is reacting in the best way possible. Yeah, even Italy, all of us, we were unprepared. We were missing our families, we were missing our contact. So we reacted in the best way that we could. Um, I believe in terms of business and in terms of internationality, we understood the reality of our countries in a better way. We as citizens, yeah, because sometimes we forget. We said we don't want to know about politics. We don't want to know about economy. We don't want to go. We don't want to know about a health system, because it's very complex even to understand. But now all of us as citizens, we needed to understand the political power, the economic power, and the health system power, because probably this is something that we didn't understood 100%.
We gave for granted every
Yeah,
time. I mean, we never posed ourselves some questions about is this necessary? Do we have to care about it? We just give it for granted. It's there.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Awareness is, I think, totally important. But I think it's also one point that this was touched this morning in the conversation, that the idea that also as designer we have to be aware of what's happening, really aware, like we have never been before, probably because I mean, I'm 34 and I've never experienced that. And I think that anyone around me in my family have never experienced that. We weren't here while there was the last influence in the beginning of the century. So we never experienced that before. And so also thinking that you are not only a consultant, but you are also a designer. I saw as you were graduating in that. So what would you recommend to fashion designers and designers in general to restart their job during this pandemic? Because we are still not after the pandemic. We are still in the pandemic.
In the pandemic, yeah. So one of my first piece of advice is that we have to, you need to do an activity to put all this anxiety and all this nervousness and this fear out of your system. If you don't put it, you are not going to be able to move on. Any of us, especially we designers, because we have a different kind of sensitivity that we perceive the universe and we perceive our world in a very different way. So we need to do something to get out this system. If you like painting, you have to paint. If you want to run, run. If you want to ride horses, ride horses. If you want to dance, dance. Because before doing that, you are not going to be able to move on. Yeah. And after that, don't forget that creativity is the fuel of your business and your career. So nurture creativity. Start approaching the steps or the rituals that nurture your creativity itself, even though everything was closed, even though everything was everyone was in the lockdown, even though it was a very difficult moment. So you have to remember that that was only a surface. There are many things happening underneath that. So please reconnect with your creativity because it's extremely important. If you don't get out, or if you don't do an exercise, or if you don't do a ritual, or if you don't generate an action to remove your anxiety, your design process are going to contain that. And that sometimes, and majority of the times, is putting your design ideas somewhere else. And design processes are not to heal personal processes. Design processes are to produce, to generate an idea, to provide the whole planet with a product that is needed. So remember, we are here to serve, and we need to serve right because our jobs are very, very, very important. Trust me, we have the capacity to provide humans with products, with experiences that they need because they need to continue living, and our job is to provide that. So, and at the same time, if you've been having like a financial problems, and if you are very bad at numbers, so ask someone that knows about numbers. Don't be afraid. Check my Instagram. Ask me questions if you are very bad at numbers. I don't mind. I'm here to support because it is very important that we designers, we learn how to ask when we don't know how to deal with the economics of our jobs, because it's so important.
Yeah, I agree. I think that this pandemic have taught us that probably we need really more than ever to be interdisciplinary and to be connected to other disciplines. Because usually, designers are expected to be the problem solver of the question, the sense makers. That's okay. That's maybe what is our duty. But the problem solver is needed more some hints from the whole world around us. I think we have still 5 minutes of time left, so I can maybe tell you one last question.
Perfect.
And it is a more general question. It's about your opinion about what we have discussed. And it's if you think that people have come out of this experience more suspicious or more open to contact with people and to get to know each other, or, with a new consciousness of the world and the job, and if are they more conscious in your opinion? Do you feel also the clients that you deal with are more conscious of the idea that we have an emergency and we will have to change everything from habits to working life also in future?
Silvia, knowing natural evolution itself,
that's why I asked you.
I know that many of us, we naturally understood the importance of being conscious, but many of us, we don't have the capacity, because sometimes, even if you want to, sometimes you don't have the capacity because your learning environment didn't allow you to learn quickly, or to learn from the experiences of others. So the reality is, any experience, because this is a very traumatic experience for all of us, any traumatic experience, for some of us, we know how to handle them, and we know how to move from a negative state to a positive state, which is being conscious, maturing, learning. But there are many of us that, unfortunately, they are under-resourced. They don't know how to deal with that, because probably their cognitive capacity is not developed enough, or probably there are some people that are blind, that they are deaf, they have another problems, they have mental problems, mental health problems. So all of that is a reality. I believe that we have to consider all these possibilities, because this is the planet that we are living in. You know, some of us, we are going to be able to move on, and some of us, we are never going to be able. But it doesn't mean that they are doing the wrong thing. It means that we, the ones that we are more conscious, we have a major responsibility to support them in that process of understanding, and to live their lives in a different way. That's why we need to be very together, because it's not who is advancing and who is not advancing, who is doing good things and who is doing bad things, because it's nothing to do with that. If I learned something about this pandemic, it's nothing to do with that. You know, something that we can say that what we are talking is a good thing, but probably it's a bad thing for someone else. But we have to deal with that. We have to be responsible for that. And we have to consider that not everyone will agree. And that's beautiful, because this is life itself. So me as a human being, and me being Colombian, and being part of a community that right now is struggling, for me, that I'm in Europe in a position that is different. I'm helping my people. I'm helping Colombians. I'm helping Latin Americans, because that's my duty. That's my responsibility. And I have to say, my family in Japan is helping me, because they know how to deal in a better way. So this is something that this is a reality. Conscious is created, but many of us, we will live the percentage of consciousness depending on our reality. And it doesn't matter if it's a huge pandemic, and if it's huge a crisis. We need to consider that we humans, we all not have the same capacity and the same conditions, because we need to be more humble with that, and more inclusive with that reality.
Yeah, truly. I really like your interpretation, the idea you have already said that probably we have to learn one culture from the other, and we don't have to leave behind those that represent a fragility, because probably I have to say that myself, I also felt fragile during this period, and so probably we should learn to turn our point of view. Unfortunately, we also ended up our time. It was really a pleasure to have this conversation with you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for being with us. But I have to say goodbye to you, Fabian. It was very nice to have you here.
Thank you very much, Silvia, and it's an honor. Bye.
See you.